Posting was posted accurately. The roll call, all of the members of the committee are here. Do we need to name them? No? Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, Supervisor Berg, motion. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Supervisor Bossert seconds. Any discussion? None. I guess the motion carries.
Oh, we gotta take a vote.
Oh, we have to take a vote?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's take a vote then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone, any nays? No, motion carries. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to say one short thing before we start. If that's okay. So last year we had a feeling of confidence that the public-private partnership with Cedar Communities was going to be successful. Unfortunately, Cedar Communities decided not to partner with us. This year, the county is in discussions with LaSada in Ozaukee County. But for everyone here, please don't assume that the negotiations will be successful. You know what assuming does. I believe we all need to consider each option as though it was the only option. We need to keep an open mind and be very thorough in our evaluation of each option because lives are depending on us. So I think with that, then we can go to the first discussion item. The skilled nursing facility, CBRF and RCAC reimbursement avenues. Yeah. What did he say?
You gotta do that one
A,
there first.
letter A is first.
Yeah.
Introduction of Paul Roback.
Oh, I think, yeah,
Did
her agenda is a little different with
Oh,
what,
okay, wait, I printed it off.
with what it
the thing.
calls.
Did you change it? Because I used mine with notes on it.
There we
Okay,
go.
yeah, all right. So in that case, the first item is introduction. Paul Roback, Community Development Educator, Facilitator.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those who haven't met yet, my name is Paul Roback. I work for UW-Madison Division of Extension, Washington County. It's a mouthful, right? So what it essentially is that the Division of Extension, our mission is to extend the resources to our people live and work throughout the state of Wisconsin, bring the challenges to the community, right back to the university to study and research. I am under contract to work here in Washington County to provide resources for both local governments, including the county board, as well as nonprofits. I do a lot of strategic planning, facilitation, public policy analysis, and I recently had the opportunity to help facilitate the Samaritan Citizen Advisory Committee. So I was the one that helped with the facilitation of the discussion, as well as compiling the report and presenting it to the county board. So my role for all of you is somewhat similar, as I understand it, that I'm here as a resource to you and to provide a little bit more structure around the conversations, the discussion, to help bring your ideas to paper, so to speak, so they're all open so that we can document them. And then I guess it's up for you to decide the future role, whether or not you want me to develop a report or present to the county board or committee or anything like that. So that's my role for all of you. And for kind of just a heads up on how we're proceeding, as I understand it, for the committee presentation discussion, is that for each of the options that were presented and discussed at the last meeting, we will have a presentation followed by an opportunity for questions and answer, and then we'll discuss limitations as well as strengths of each option. And to help with that, in the note taking I prepared, it's just a note take a piece of paper that has the 5 options on them and then a square for both strengths limitations that you can use while you're listening to the presentations. You can put that to paper so you don't I know there's a lot of data, a lot of acronyms in this process. So it's just sometimes I find it helpful that you have the opportunity to jot down your notes as ideas come up. So again, we'll have presentations, Q&A, and then facilitate a conversation on, and then I'll capture ideas up on the easel paper. Any questions? Pretty.
Yeah.
Sure.
Would you be able to like move that over here where we could all see it easier?
Yes. I just thought I'd
Thank you.
keep it out of the way for a moment.
Anyone else have a question?
No.
No? No?
Appreciate it. There's no data on it, just, like I said, the 5 options and space to take notes.
So then are we moving on to B? Okay, so moving on to B, the renovation of the Samaritan Health Center. Skilled nursing, 48 beds, CBRF, 31 beds currently.
Good evening. My name is John Cronin. I'm with AG Architecture in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. And AG Architecture has been a okay. So AG Architecture is a 5th generation firm that was started in the early 1960s. Its primary focus has been in the development of senior housing for over 60 years. I personally have known that firm for 35 years. This is my 36 years within that company. And we are specialists in that field. And we are known around the country. So we're a national firm that is here locally. So I come here to speak with a little bit of experience about senior housing. And what I would like to do is let you know that Matt Furno had invited us and our chief engineer, or myself and the chief engineer, to do a walkthrough. We spent about 2.5 hours going through the Samaritan Health Center. So we did not do any type of exhaustive investigations or anything, but we walked through and could see the conditions of what's going on. And there is some concerns about the building itself and its age. I mean, it's so 58, 56 years old. So we had to walk through and see both the current areas that residents would go for their lunch or dinner or breakfast, and they call it the day room or the activity room. And then we spent time looking at mechanical systems within the building. I will try to move through this slide if we can figure out which direction. Mike, got a hand here. Sit. Space bar.
Station break.
Yeah, that's the next one. In this photograph, I'm showing that day room. We took a look at the condition of that space. One of the biggest complaints that we heard from maintenance group was that the wood windows that are on this floor, that are on all the floors in this section of the building, are in complete disrepair. They're holding them up with all kinds of issues to keep them closed and keep them tight. But they literally are in a condition of failure. So that's one of the suggestions of walking through the buildings, that the windows at least are something that needs to be taken care of and repaired. Sections of flooring within the space are, some of it's cut out, some of it's, inlaid. It's sort of has this inconsistency where some bad parts are taken out and some new parts are patched in. You can see on that left-hand corner slide that the condition of the cabinetry that's within that space is past its prime. One of the spaces, there's, the drawers are completely missing. And, it's just needs one way to do that would be to refresh the spaces, right? Bring them up to a level of brightness and lightness and what's currently happening in the industry right now. Okay, there's a different level of look. This is a dated, kind of drab look. I mean, we've got containers that are just sitting out. There's, you'd like to close those off and put those in closets of some kind, anything that would hide some of the stuff that comes out. We did take a look at the pantries, and they were under demolition to be reconstructed. And I would suggest that an building environmental assessment team be allowed to go through the building to look for anything that might be toxic in materials. This building being as old as it is, the amount of work, meaning daily work, that are, the caregiving and everything that's going on in there, there has been there are issues that need to be addressed. And again, I'm not an environmental person to go and do that, but I suggest that that's something to be taken care of. If you were going to do any renovation within the space, you would need to have that done. You want to come in, you want to get testing done. All buildings have asbestos that are built in this era, and it's obvious from just an observation. And but obviously, testing proves things. So if there was ever to be a renovation, you need the environmental assessment, you need testing, and then prior to that renovation, you would need the abatement to happen. Okay, so that's a whole process. And of course, it's disruptive to residents, right?
Yes,
Chris
question real
Bassett.
quick.
Yes, sir.
So quick question, is any of what you just talked about with testing and potential abatement included in the estimate you're gonna show us in a little bit?
Done.
Okay. All right, thank you.
That's it's the estimate we're showing it's a ballpark estimate.
Yeah.
It gives you, it says, hey, we're gonna establish a budget, probably going to want to narrow in further and further on costs, right? It's a process. So you start up here, and you funnel it down until you get, okay, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. Here's what we can do, and here's what we're not going to do. Those are the decision-making processes. This is a big building. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made.
Yeah, so this estimate could potentially go up then, depending on how some of these things go.
It is an estimate based on a few things. One is what I call fit and finish of the space, right? Any interior designer would love to come in here and give it the brightness and the liveliness and the correct furniture and lighting and everything to make it an environment that was friendly, that was respectful to the resident, gives them a little bit of the dignity of being in a nicer space than the institutionalized look that's currently within the building. Again, this is within that space because that is the main room for dining and activities that the residents are brought into. So that was one of my suggestions on the walkthrough, is that one thing you could do is clean up this room, right, and make it nice. And in part of that estimate that goes through it, it's like, do you clean up this room? Then do you do the lobby and the corridors? Make the nurses stations more efficient and better, because that's another process is to go through with staff. How do we make things more efficient if we're going to do some type of changes? So that is the first suggestion. The second suggestion, this is the architectural, this is, like I said, the fit and finish, the stuff that you see, the people see, the residents see. And that is to, one would be to do these rooms. The second would be to do the corridor or do the corridors, right? I think this room is the most important. Corridors, and then obviously resident rooms can be updated and made fresh. And so those numbers are sort of listed in that little thing. Making the entry experience through the front door more inviting is another one. I mean, it's just ways to freshen the look and feel within the building. And so there's numbers associated with that. And you can pick and choose and break them down or establish budgets, right? We're going to spend so much on this stuff. This is, and there's always two components to a building. It happens in architecture all the time. It's what people see, people concentrate on, right? It's what people don't see, which is the stuff that makes the buildings work. It's the mechanical systems. Right? So we had an opportunity to go through all the mechanical systems within this building. I want to say that there's a lot of broken pieces within this building. There are, well, I can move through this a little bit. In this particular slide, the slide on the left shows, you can see some streaks, some vertical streaks that are coming down through the wall. Okay. And that's water that's coming down through the wall. Now the slide to the right shows that you can see the blistering in the paint that is caused by water. So this is near the intersection of where the RCAC is with the Samaritan building. There's a lot of water coming in. The roof isn't right. Something's wrong, right? Water always generally comes in this case, through the roof. So there's a roof intersection within here, and water is now migrating around to the building. Water in this building, water on your walls, water is bad because that stagnant water can begin to cause mold. Okay, you do not want that in this environment. Any water that gets hidden behind anything can cause mold. And so you got to find the source of the leak and make sure that it's cleaned up. And then you got to go in and make sure that pull these tiles up, everything else, and get into that wall and see if there's anything. Again, some testing, some reviewing, some investigations of that. You look down on the right-hand slide, you can see there's a tile floor along the base The tile looks like it's kind of delaminating from the floor. You can see some gaps in the where it meets the wall. Again, it's pretty telltale sign that water got underneath it and the adhesive is coming up. And again, with flooring, not knowing the age of that flooring, again, test it, take a look at it. It's this is an issue. This isn't an issue you should have in a healthcare environment, right? This is just this is work, this is maintenance, this is stuff that needs to get taken care of. It's just that there's a lot of stuff in the building itself that I'm from talking to the maintenance people that they're constantly chasing one thing after the other. And things aren't that could be done are not getting done because it's an emergency every single day with something else. Okay, the slide on the left is basically the laundry facility. There's just laundry equipment in there. It works. But it's an environment that is it's just sort of, it could be better. It could be made better for the employees that work in it if they had the right right equipment for folding and storing and taking care of things. I mean, a drop-in ceiling might help liven the space, maybe some paint or something like that. But this is not the most efficient laundry I've ever seen or worked in a building. It's just sort of long and linear. There's just no plan to it. Again, I'll move over to the right. The kitchen is large enough. It's great in size. It is, in my personal opinion, it is a disarray. It is not the way a kitchen should be organized. A food service designer, people that design just for kitchens and food service could come in there and show how to make it the most efficient way to produce the meals and everything for the residents. It's a lot of space that could work. Now there's some problems. There's multiple different types of floor within here, and some of the floor is delaminating, especially when you get near where the dishwashing area is. Where the dirty dishes and things are coming, the water is not going into a drain. It's like rolling across the floor and it's getting under the tile and things are kind of popping. So there's just work, there's just maintenance and things that need to be taken care of. So behind the scenes are your mechanical systems. The slide on the upper right is your boiler system for your heat. There are two of them. One, I think, is offline. But right when we were there, both were offline. One was waiting for a part. It was taking a long time for that part to come in to get working again. But it was summer and the building seemed to be, the environment seemed to be very good. These are, they do their job and they have been maintained because you need heat. The efficiency of these boilers compared to what the engineering that could be done today, where you would have maybe successive boilers where one would be, well, they work in succession, right? So one boiler will work and then it'll shut down and another boiler will pick it up. It saves the life of the boiler from running full time. So boilers can cycle, and then by having multiple boilers, so when we get in our bitter freeze winters, if you need to get the heat up, then more boilers kick on and kick out more heat to the building itself. The slide on the left is the domestic hot water system. So there's a series of tanks. These provide hot water to the restrooms, to the bathing, laundry, kitchen, and you can see that there are some calcifications, some staining, some things going on. Something's going on with those pressure relief valves that it's spewing out the water. Again, it's just another thing that's going on that's and so the other element of this thing is that today's codes require 140-degree hot water delivered to the point source delivery, right? A faucet. And then there is a temperature control valve that then takes that water down and takes it down to 110. You need that 140 degrees and it needs to be pumped and looped and moving so that you avoid any type of bacteria that's forming within that piping system. So a lot of what we're looking at is not what you would do in the world that we do today. A lot of it was perfect from back in the 1960s, but here we are in the 20s. It's the 20s. It's the rules and the engineering and the safety of everything is quite different. This picture you see on the right, that is your condensing power. And what that does is that takes warmer water, condenses it down to create cooler water, which then mixes with that. Doesn't mix with it, but it passes through a coil with the warm water from the boilers, and that gives you the room temperatures that you're looking for. That piece of equipment, condenser on the roof, is inactive. It's broken. It doesn't work. So it's been replaced by another condensing unit that sits on a trailer outside of the building itself. It's caving the parking area that it's in, so it's been there for a few years. It's and then the one that's replaced it and is on the ground is running into through the generator room, and the generator room should be sealed. It shouldn't be open with pipes running through it. So it's just there's a whole lot of work to look at with the mechanical systems itself. You have what we call them fresh air intakes, and we also have exhaust fans, right? So when we exhaust air, we want to bring air in. We temper that air. So, when it's cold enough, we got to heat that air up, and then that will mix within the fan coils and get distributed. And in a healthcare environment, especially with what we've just gone through, you want those air changes and exchanges and everything right on target. You want to keep people as safe as possible. And right now, just from observation, is not being done within this building. I did not get to do an extensive walk around the building on the exterior. This is just back by the loading dock, and you can see that it's in a state of deterioration. That the concrete is crumbling all around that loading dock. We have a handrail at the stair that is kind of linky right there. It's kind of moved, and the areas that it's anchored into are deteriorating really quickly. And then so it's just, there's some issues of, it's not just outside, it's inside. So Okay, so this estimated cost, this is, again, I want to say that we're up here, we're just thinking about possibilities of things, right? So there's two things. There's the finish updates that I've talked about. And that is, refreshing the areas that your residents are in. Right? And then it's kind of broken down into further categories to just give you an idea of if you wanted to only spend money on the dining room, if you wanted to spend money on the resident rooms. It's all kind of broken out to think about that there's options. There's not a set thing. It's a decision and it's a cost. You know, it's just everyday
I
life.
have a question.
Yes,
On the resident rooms, 15,000, does that include the plumbing? And does that include like redoing the bathroom? Otherwise, 15,000 is a lot of money for paint and flooring.
go ahead and include the fixtures in the
So it
bathroom.
includes the
You would
bathroom.
update the whole room, right?
Right.
It's
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Jody?
Yes, so as long as you're going through the details, not being in construction myself, I'm just curious, while you mentioned it, there are 3 areas that I didn't see in your estimates unless I don't understand construction. One would be the boilers that you addressed when we looked at the pictures,
Mhm.
and the other would be the condenser systems. And then the kitchen, you address the kitchen, but I don't see the kitchen broken out in here. So does the boiler fit under the HVAC and plumbing systems combined or?
yes, it does.
Okay. And then as far as the kitchen,
I don't see the kitchen. I guess I didn't ask for the kitchen as part of that.
Okay.
They can certainly get an estimated number for it.
Supervisor Bassert?
Okay, so you mentioned on their roof issues that we're allowing water in. Is that reflected in this estimate?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so that's
I
another
guess
item.
this is a bigger kind of thing out here.
Yeah,
And then it's just to give you an idea, like what do we call it, the order of magnitude, right?
yeah,
If we got to do something, we could do you can do little things at a time, but the bigger issues are what it is that you want to address.
Yep.
Now, I don't know how the food service is within the building, how, are residents satisfied or, let's,
Yeah.
you do a survey of your employees and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just
okay,
an observation I have and
yeah.
something to think about.
Expounding on that, if we did all of this stuff here, what would be potentially upcoming maintenance issues in 5 years or 10 years? For example, I don't see any of the resident room windows on here. You mentioned dining room windows,
Mhm.
what kind of life do they have, as an example?
I believe resident room windows have been replaced at some point. 2009.
Okay, so those are in pretty good shape, but what other 5 years or 10 years down the road, like what other needs might we see?
That's why if you're making a decision to do something with this building, and that would be to get what's called a building environment assessment. Because they will send in a team and they will analyze everything and they can tell you how much life is left in a piece of equipment.
Yep.
They're very, very thorough, like right down to the windows and some, figuring out drafts and things like that. They really
Yeah.
will do that's their job. It's their scientific world.
And the Havoc, that question on the Havoc systems, air exchange.
Mhm.
Probably doesn't meet code today. I'm assuming.
It would not make today's standard codes, no.
So would we have to bring that up to code?
Man, these old buildings are really one of these where, you ask for forgiveness sometimes, right?
Although we'd like it to be up to code.
So, but if you wanted it to be up to code, it can be designed that way. Right? It can be, we got an HVAC, it's $3 million in there for that. I mean, I would expect for a number like that you're up to code. Except I don't know, without talking to the contractor that put these numbers together, how he broke that if he broke HVAC down into subcomponents. But I think that number covers definitely getting your air exchanges brought up to code for sure.
Any other questions on?
I've got a question. John, when did you go through this building?
Late in August.
Oh, August, okay.
Has everybody been through the building? You all seen it? Should I get behind the scenes and the mechanical stuff and everything? Okay. Then have you gone to another building, a newer building with, similar mechanicals?
No.
You would go, you would understand. Okay, because everything would be labeled. The direction of the water would have, everything's got a label on it. That's the way we engineer everything today, so everybody knows what everything is. And the environments themselves are clean as a whistle, right? They are just so, back in the day when it was first built, it was clean. It's 56 years later, 55 years later, and I mean, I walked through and the softener had been offline for like 3 or 4 months, the water softener. And there were people in there literally taking out bucket loads of salt. I don't know where they're getting it from because I didn't go peek into that room, but that softener had been broken. And so now you have, for your hot water and cold, but you've got unsoftened water, which you bring in water softener because you have hardness in the water. You get rust, you got iron, you got lime, you got all that kind of stuff. By having that offline, there's a potential that there was damage done within the piping system with the hardness of that water that went through there. What it is, no one knows. It needs to be analyzed. But it's the, I don't want to say it's the little things, it's the big things. But my tour was, and I can repeat this, is we're always chasing the next. Every day there's a new emergency that needs to be taken care of, and there's other things that aren't getting done. So that's, how do you get that balance back? I know that's your question, and your process is to learn about that. Any other questions? They're good questions.
Yeah, I just have one more, Linda, I
Oh,
guess.
yeah.
So kind of in summary, with this somewhat itemized list of 10 million approximately, is it safe to say this does not cover taking out everything interior wise and just keeping the structure of the building and starting over? This is just a kind of a cherry picking approach to fixing these items that you've identified as kind of high level, needs to happen now, kind of. Is that accurate?
This is not like a gut and remodel
Okay.
number. I wouldn't even know that number would even approach.
Well, that's why I brought up, that's my concern, that as we talk about the roof not being on here or the
Yeah.
things like that, or not knowing where they may fit under here itemized, that the 10 million may all of a sudden be 18 million, and we have no idea because we didn't know some of the details. So that's why I'm clarifying.
And I understand that to the effect that, I'd get that roof fixed because it's been a problem since they built it. They built it incorrectly and they're constantly fixing the wall, cleaning up, doing stuff at that intersection. There's a lot of damage there. I just looked at, it's not just in one spot, it's multiple areas all over the place. That's an immediate need right there.
But it wasn't put on.
Wasn't put on this, but
Okay.
I mean, if there was a capital, budget, I mean, that item. I'm sure it's been brought up, it should be on there for approval or not, I guess, it's just
I have a question that actually might be more for Matt, I'm not sure. So we have 3.5 million on the existing bond debt. And my understanding is we get that back over time with Medicaid reimbursements as we're billing on a monthly basis. Now, if it costs 10 million in debt for the remodel, would any of that come back to us in the same way?
If you recall, at our last meeting, we will have a company come in, individuals, representatives who will speak on what, the whole reimbursement, because it's quite difficult as to if we put 10 additional million in this building or 17 like was suggested, what percent would we actually get back? They'll tell us about that. My guess is that we would probably, and of course, it's all correlated with how many years of operation will continue, but it would probably be in the 65 to 70% recovered guesstimate.
Anyone else have any questions?
I've got one.
Supervisor Toma?
What's the square footage on that building?
I don't know.
That's one of the problems because we're looking at a building that at one point was 300 residents. And now we're looking at the need for 48 residents. Today we have 50 in the skilled nursing and we have 28 CPRF on the first floor. So if we would remodel, renovate, we would have floors that would remain empty. Or we would seek another use for it.
What's the square footage on the new building?
Well, each new 16 unit, we call it a pod or a household, is approximately 15,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think the square footage was actually on the drawings.
Yeah.
Anyone
So-
else, have any questions? I guess we're good on that depressing subject.
Okay, well, this will cheer you up.
But before we get into the, excuse me, we were going to discuss the strengths and limitations before we jump into.
Sure.
Just so it's all fresh in our mind, right? And I'm happy to move wherever you want. There.
Yeah, over there would be, we could all see. Our audience probably can't.
But you want me on the other side?
Yeah, maybe right, like that gap there might be really good.
Here,
And at least the audience can see
Then
us.
these
Yeah.
guys have trouble seeing.
I'm good. how flexible is it, right? So. Based on what we just heard, I thought we'd start with the limitations before we go into the strengths. So what did you hear as limitations of the current facility or the renovations of the current facility?
Seems like we would be underutilizing that building when we talk about whole floors not being used.
Although on the plus side, it's available for another use.
Yeah, but
Pros
we're
and
looking
cons.
at limitations.
Limitations,
Yeah,
abatement of what we're likely to find.
That was the environmental.
Yeah. Right.
A lot of broken pieces in the mechanical parts of the building.
the future costs. We know what this would cost, but then 5 years from now, 10 years from now. When we do that study, we might find out that 5 years from now, it's gonna need another 5 million. And 5 years,
Ongoing maintenance.
yeah,
I also heard that not all the costs were covered in the current estimate.
yeah,
Right,
So
yeah.
like kitchen,
right.
Yep, roofing.
Right, right.
So there might be other costs that aren't factored in.
And another thing that he had mentioned is it's not a total gut and remodel, it's kind of picking and choosing, so that fits with that last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there may be a political aspect to this. And I'm not sure if this is the right spot to mention it. But Samaritan is really important to people in West Bend. And it serves a lot of people from West Bend. But when you get into Germantown, Richfield, Kewaskum, Hartford. There may not be a perception of the same value perception may not be there.
so was it a location issue that it's kind of a location based?
Yeah, because it's in West Bend, it seems to primarily be a West Bend resource. Even though officially it's a county resource. And so that creates problems, of course, with the county board as well, because if we're gonna spend this kind of money, we need broad county board support, and I think there's a legitimate question as to whether that support would be there or not.
I added political support countywide with a question.
I think related to the roof not being covered and just all the water that he uncovered, water damage without even seeing behind the walls or the floors. Could there be some large hidden additional costs just because there could be, maybe they do find black mold, or how when you watch those TV shows, those remodel shows, it's like, oh, sorry to tell you this, but it's gonna be another $10,000 because we found this. So that's a bit of a concern.
With the age of the building, and maybe this, I should have asked this before. But structurally, physically, is the building physically like in good shape where it's not at risk of falling down or anything crazy like that? That might be,
That's a concrete structure. I wasn't there to observe anything structural at all.
okay,
So, again, it goes back to that building environmental assessment.
Yeah.
That is another, another component that they
we'd
explore.
wanna- Yeah, is there any reason to think that there might be a potential problem looming? What strikes me in the back of my mind is there was that condo complex in Florida. And, there was one in Waukesha that they shut down because of structural concerns. And I know the Florida one, they figured out eventually it was a design issue where they changed the design and the load bearings weren't right for the new design, but
I added unknown structural issues.
yep, okay.
Limitations. I heard one, I'll throw out there. If you agree or disagree, just let me know. The whole aesthetic fit and finish for residents, visitors and employees. Seem like one.
Yeah,
Yes.
mentioned.
Yeah.
I
I
think,
think it's
yeah,
the abatement. of
Abatement, yeah,
initial issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this will be more of a question. I went through Samaritan about 3 years ago. And I seem to remember the rooms being kind of smaller and maybe not configured in a way that fits what a modern facility might have. You know, I mean, if we were to use the existing building, would the rooms themselves need a major redesign, or are they usable with the setup they have?
Matt says the size is fine.
Okay.
And I honestly did not get to get into a resident room.
Okay,
My, Tony Luciano, who is our chief engineer in our office, did, and his remark was, they seem a little small. For nursing, nursing room is generally a smaller room. For the CBRF, it could be a better space. Not knowing what the walls are between units, if those are like metal stud walls. Or I don't know where bearing is or anything in that building, but if the walls were easily removed, you could combine unit,
yeah,
and that's done all the time. And so that's a possibility, right?
For the age of the building, the county has done an excellent job in 2009 to renovate and reduce. Those are all 2 and 4 bedroom rooms, and they were able to reduce some. We have almost 100% private, which is very good for that age building. But I agree with John when it comes to CBRF, where it should be more home-like, it definitely is not.
yeah, more institutional feel,
Very institutional.
yeah.
That on the weaknesses, institutional feel.
Ready to move on to strengths?
Are there any?
Well, we heard one.
I,
We started off with, there's space that could be used for something else. So, think is, like, there was underutilized space. Could
Oh,
be
right, the
business.
unutilized space. And then also that it's probably a very strong, solid building. We just don't know it for a fact at this point.
Another, that, yeah, if Medicare will in fact pick up 65 to 70% of the cost, that makes doing a remodel a lot more viable.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify that that's Medicare paying above what they would pay for a resident in our existing building, right?
Yes, that's correct. If I may answer, you have this as part of your handout, as part of your packet that you received a while ago. But anyway, in this, it talks about when we opened the doors in 1968, it was designed for 332 residents. The square footage of the 5-story building is 146,348.
Yeah.
Big.
I just- Yeah, comparing it to the square footage of what we're gonna see in a few minutes, we're reducing our square footage by half if we go that route.
Are there additional strengths you wanted to list for renovations?
I think we have a good staff, and that may not pertain to comparing to the other option we're gonna see today. But when we look at some of the other options we're gonna look at, I think we definitely wanna factor that in,
Right.
that we have a good staff working there.
I think it also brings up a good point that you may come up with additional strengths and limitations as you hear other,
Yeah.
the other options as well. It's like, oh yeah, now that we know
Yeah.
more about option C, there may be more strengths. to identify in this solution.
You know, I had asked for some sort of independent ranking to see like where Samaritan fell compared to other government and private facilities as far as quality of care. And Mike was able to provide me with a link to Medicare, and they monitor facilities and rank them. I think we should note on there that Samaritan was given a very good ranking for the quality of care. They were given 4 stars on the 5-star system, so they're above average.
And I wonder how they determine that, if that's with talking to the residents, because the residents that I have heard from feel it's home, staff is family. I mean, our staff is awesome.
Yeah. I think, Matt, do you know more about what factors they use when they determine that? Because I think Mike actually went to you to get that info, if I remember right. There you go.
Thank you. There are a myriad of factors that go in, and we receive sheets every month. And there are something like 20-some pages long. And it's based on the state and the feds have done so much into this area that they keep track of every single hour that an employee is working, serving the resident. And we have to submit that. And some of the information is we have even better, and we're not alone, it's all nursing homes. For example, when you have a salaried person, salaried nurse, that salaried nurse could work 10 hours today, but the formula only allows up to 8 hours. If you have an hourly CNA, then it would record the number of direct care hours. So there is an administrator in the United States that do cartwheels over the 5-star system because there are a lot of flaws in that and a lot of assumptions that they make that are problematic. But they do look at the number of bed sores, the number of falls. They go through a myriad of tests, and every single month it moves around.
Yeah.
So a facility could be 5 stars this time, and in a very short period, a quarter, be down to 2 stars. And then they can work their way back up. So there are numerous things, and county facilities struggle with the fact that in general, we receive more behavioral type residents. Consequently, those residents will fall more, have more injuries. They will need more psychotropic medication, antipsychotic medication, and those are strikes against us. So there are a myriad of things that go into that star system.
Strengths, or would you like to move on to the next?
We're good. Thank you.
I should mention, I will take this all up.
Okay.
be included in your minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're ready to move on to the replacement of Samaritan.
Then I've got one question.
Okay, Supervisor Toma.
Beth? We renovate this building. Are we going to take the top floors and blow them, put them to the bottom? Or are we gonna renovate the whole building? When we were looking at this, we're talking about renovating 1 floor, 2 floors, or all the floors?
Well, it depends on what the county board instructs us to do. If they find, I'm part of this under the title of master plan for all the buildings of the county, and we are looking at the potential of building a new building across the street from where the PAC is, so the north side 33. Now, let's say hypothetically, the decision was to renovate this building and make use of that new space for in lieu of a new building, or build a smaller new building and utilize this building on floors that space that we do not need. The problem that I see is that I would never recommend that we would at this point spend money in the renovation process. The building is too old and there are too many issues. And you could build a new building that is highly efficient for a county building. But that's not for me.
Okay, so looking at a concept for the replacement building. Essentially what I've been working with Matt for a couple of years now. And we talked about a lot of things. And one of the things I shared with him was back in the late 90s, there's a doctor by the name of William Thomas. He was out east and I believe it was in New York. And he wanted to say that we can build better environments for our seniors. And his idea was, let's just build a house, obviously to the regulatory standards of everything. Let's make it feel like a house. And at that time, it was to put eight residents in a house. And they were called greenhouses. There's a specific program that's what it's called. And there's a bunch of set rules and everything you have to do to qualify as greenhouse. But his lecturing on that concept struck so many providers of senior living, and it didn't just become putting 8 people in a home for skilled care. People started looking at it. Well, it'd be nice for memory support. It would be nice for, you know, I call it assisted living, or what we call, you know, CBRF. And so it's been, the idea has been repeated all around the country. It has moved on to the point, like for our purposes tonight, we're going to talk about houses that are 16 units, residences for people. There's 1 story, it looks like a house, it's got a garage door, the whole deal, which makes sense because that's a place for your deliveries to come in and, you know, bring something in, and it's not, you know, out in the rain and stuff like that. Now, the original greenhouses wanted people to be, you know, the caregivers, their CNAs, to be multitasked and all kinds of things. So that they take care of a resident, but if something happens and somebody knocks a glass of juice over or something, they clean it up. They, you know, they do all the tasks within the household itself. But other people have worked beyond that program and, you know, stick within the regulations of the state and things like that. And so we got to talking to Matt about it, and I said, well, you know, we've done this. You know, there's different ways of doing what I call a household model. That's the term used in the industry today. And basically what that talks about is you have clusters of rooms of residents, but when they come out of their room, they don't have a whole long corridor to walk down or anything, but they can walk to the central common area, which is like, you know, the dining and some living space, you know, TV, and have a kitchen or serving pantry or something that prepares food for them. Then this concept developed as a 16-bed unit that has that same stuff. You come out of your room, you don't have a long corridor, you come into the common areas, so the dining room, the living room, everything that you need in the house is in there, and it's a fireplace and the whole deal. So what we talked about is the downsizing this. Okay, the other thing that we talked about is we build to the highest level of skilled regulation wise and the CBRF regulations. What's the difference? CBRF requires a certain larger amount of activity space outside the room than a skilled does. So you have a little bit more square footage. Now you have a building that becomes flexible. It can serve CBRF or it can serve skilled. Depending on the need, you can balance that by having these particular buildings. So get beyond the site. Let's move to this next slide. I worked with Matt looking at multiple sites around the county, and yeah, came up with and said we have this site over like so this building that we're in right now, which is kind of funny because oh, here's a site. I'm like, you couldn't start with that one instead of making me do like 4 or 5 other sites. Anyhow, it made a lot of sense. It seems to be a site that fits in very well here with your campus of buildings. And it is, it's definitely the right size to get everything to fit. So here, just because I showed you aerials before, that last shot, I'm gonna show you aerial now. So, let me explain how this project would work. You would have two buildings here on the left-hand side, and they have an interconnected piece. Okay, so they're not freestanding all the way. They'll look freestanding when you do landscaping and everything, because nobody will see that interconnected piece. So each one will look like a house, right? And in that interconnected piece, there's some additional administrative office and stuff like that. Plus, we can put our firewall through there, which then separates you, basically separates your buildings, right? It's done on purpose because without that, the buildings would get too large, and then you wouldn't be able to build in wood frame. Oh, did I see we're building in wood frame construction? Well, that saves money on cost because most this is called an I2, and generally, if it's larger than 1 story, you would have to build out of non-combustible materials. So how this would work is there's another building on the site besides the 5 16-unit buildings, and that is what I just call it the mothership, because that is where you're gonna have administrative offices. You're going to have some rehab within that building. You're also gonna have what I call the central kitchen. Okay, that central kitchen, I believe, is that going to provide like Meals on Wheels and any of that kind of?
Meals on Wheels with the RCA's.
It is going to. Okay, so here's how that main kitchen would work and supports the households. Right, the households are going to have a menu. They're going to have dietary restrictions, depends on the resident, that kind of thing. But that central kitchen then does all of the prep work. Okay, I just call it prep work. Package, and it gets delivered to the household, right? Any work that you may see that working with a food service consultant or everything will tell you that, well, I can get you certain meals that are prepared in the kitchen, they're flash frozen, and then they call it retherming within the environment of the house. Now, the house has a kitchen, has a full-size kitchen that will have to have a fire protection system over the range. All the equipment needs to be certified, nationals, NSF, something like so it's all, but it can be good looking equipment. It doesn't have to be that standard, kitchen look type equipment. So food is prepped, it's brought over. You have things, and you also have the ability to, if somebody wants to sleep in the morning, they get up at 9 and they want a bowl of Cheerios, and they can have a bowl of Cheerios, right? It's they're not directed to just have what you're what's having for breakfast. You can choose breakfast. It's not a set. It's going to be this every day kind of thing. And again, you get to sleep, you can wake up, you can hang out in the living room, watch TV. It's really set up to be more like you lived in a house and less institutionalized how you are. It's time to go get dinner, Mr. Cronin, right? It's not, and then you're marched down and then you have to wait. It's like a lot of nursing homes waiting or whatever. It's so the whole operation of the model is much different. The other thing is that the buildings will sit in a setting where you have landscape. There's a term in the industry today, and it's called biophilic design. I work with a landscape architecture. He starts or landscape architect. He starts every one of his presentations like this. We were born in nature and we will die in nature. So why not surround ourselves with nature the rest for our life, right? And so he does a lot of um, what we call healing garden design and stuff like that. So but it's very um, geared towards elderly residents and, you know, capturing their abilities. So we can put outside of these homes, we could put raised gardens. You know, potentially, you know, people can think they're growing their own food. Obviously, that would help things like that, but that's going off track a little bit. But the whole sense of it is that we would do 2 buildings connected so that you get up to 32. And then we would have 3 buildings connected, which would get you up to 64. And a total of 80 units within the development. So I'm gonna slide around a little bit. And that mothership building I was talking is on the left. And then you can see, you know, we kind of have this park-like setting. We have this kind of park in the center that fits on this plan, this site plan, just because there's enough room. There is a nursing home. It was a county nursing home. I can't remember what county it is here in Wisconsin. They have submitted for awards to the National Housing, you know, Senior Housing magazines, Argentum Senior Housing News. I'm missing one. And it's interesting that they've entered it and they have a great story that they tell behind it because the community is behind their new residents. So the fact that they at that particular community they have like a 4th of July picnic, the fire department comes, neighbors come, you know, and they have events at that residence. So they really invite the community to be part of their community. It's a fascinating story. I wish I had the county that it was. But they've written a great story about their building. And as a judge for that, one of the criteria is community integration. Okay, what are you doing with your community? Are you just isolating yourself, or are you really inviting people in? So there's essentially an opportunity to get that kind of interaction because you could create some type of park-like space. You know, you could have the barbecue, you could have the fire trucks come and put the ladders up. You invite the children to see the fire truck day and stuff like that. So there's a way to encourage that intergenerational experience for residents. So that there's just that feeling that they're not being, that they're not isolated, that they still are part of that community. So we're looking at the site plan and you can see that there are the 5 16-unit buildings. And then there is a mothership space and then a green space within the center. There would be green space, what I call protected green space for the residents. So they have a front patio to come out on the front of the buildings and sit outside. And I wonder if I got a photograph of that. So it's just looking more at that same floor plan. Now the benefits of this lifestyle, here's the building plan itself. So you can see the rooms are in that gray color. And the circulation is in the yellow, and then in the darker gray color, there is there's a kitchen, there's dining spaces. You can see the dining tables, and then there's like a fireplace. I've done 2-sided fireplaces, and then that would have a living room with seating in it and tables, and they can watch TV. There is a separate front door entrance that you see down, kind of down through the courtyard on the left-hand side. And then to the right of that, you see that outdoor patio space that I'm talking about. So then where you see on the right-hand side, there's a parking garage. I don't know who's parking in there or anything, but that is it looks like a garage on a house. You could keep supplies in there, you could keep, and then bring in, the things that need to be brought in, to service the kitchen, through that garage. The mechanical rooms are right next to that on the lower right-hand side. So if anybody needs to come in and do the work on the furnace or something like that, they can get right into those mechanical rooms and not disturb the residents. So this is that plan. In this plan, we do have a therapy room. We do have a small salon, training. So this is a whole skilled nursing unit. It's a training toilet. Obviously soiled and clean linens, soiled and clean utility rooms are all part of this plan. So it operates just like a standard nursing or standard CBRF, but it is more of a household model. And then these are what I just call the lifestyle vignettes. One of the things about these buildings is we can mix them up a little bit with their architecture so that it's not just a rubber stamp building all around. We can put a different skin and a different paint and look to each one and make it feel like a neighborhood. Again, biophilic design, plenty of green space. Everybody's got nice views out of their units. And again, it's just the style of architecture for each building can change a little bit. You can see there's the front door, there's a patio space in that courtyard. Again, another look. Look for everyone here, I guess. Okay, so just to give you some of the lifestyle look, these are some particular dining rooms in our household. Up the one on the right is out west in Boise, Idaho. The one on the left hand side is in New Hampshire. The one on the right, I'm not quite sure, but you see the idea is that there's dining, but in some they're putting one large table, and so the residents all feel like they're all part of the same group and same team and things. So it's the family style type look. So it doesn't need to be exactly like this, or they can put tables together, obviously. Living room spaces, quaint, cozy. That's the stars I can say all of these terms for it. I'm glad we got one with some people in this photograph on the bottom right. It gives a little life of what residents can enjoy. So I'm showing some of these, a bedroom. Again, nice big window, look outside. You're right at ground level. You see the trees. We have skill. You can be skilled, and then in this particular one on the left, we have some bariatric units that were created. So that's a possibility to include that. And then this gives the ability to take the resident straight to the bathroom, to the toilet. Wellness, which I always like to call just well-being. We encourage, kind of a bit of active lifestyle. Keep residents moving to the degree that they can. Everybody needs some exercise. And then this is a pretty good one. The one on the right is down in Florida. Obviously, because everything is blue. And in that photograph, they're doing bowling, which is which was fun. And then emphasis too, that there's not just space inside, but we concentrate on the space outside, because in our Wisconsin weather, we enjoy that. And in some cases, we are been doing is we're adding radiant panels to like these, you see these porches. We do radiant panels in the ceiling that, especially now, I've been talking about this before COVID started, is to extend the season of your outdoor space so that you can make it comfortable. It's gonna snow tomorrow, but if you could sit outside with a coat on and just watch it snow for a little bit, being outside and having some warmth come down from the ceiling, really just extends the experience. And then since COVID and the requirements for people to be visiting outside and everything, when less was known about the virus, just makes a lot of sense. I have gotten more requests since COVID to activate courtyards and open courtyards and things that senior providers have, because they have green lawn space and a couple of trees, and they've contacted us and say, how do we activate this? How do we get our residents outside? How do we, do stuff? How do we engage this outdoors again? So we've got all kinds of ideas how to do that. And here's just lifestyle, just everybody's happy. So let's move on to, for us, we could do our production schedules would be, if you were to do something like this, it would take us about 6 months to put the design documents together. That's just this chart shows construction. I explain the entire chart to you, but I'll explain the process too. First building to get started is the mothership building, right? That's the key building that needs to be done before any other building opens up. It needs to be operational. Okay, so that's the building that would start. Then subsequently, each pad for the other buildings is then sequenced. So one of the 16 unit buildings is started, its infrastructure is put in underground, its slab is poured, some question about basement. But that building gets started, that building starts to get framed. The concrete guys move over to the next building pad, get that poured, that gets cured. And then, the framing team has now got everything framed up on building 1 and is now moving over to building 2. So it was a whole sequence that they would move through, so that as the contractors tells us, we're not sending anybody home and making them, wait. We're going to keep the sequence going so that the whole flow of delivering the buildings is you deliver every 30 days or every 45 days, whatever the final schedule is that you got a new building that opens and kind of goes in this. Yeah, just like that. That's what this chart is displaying. So get to construction costs again. Construction costs right now is always an estimate, especially today. The supply chain, there's still issues. There's still problems. Anything that you want out of China, they keep shutting it down because of COVID. It slows things up. But this project right now, again, is this ballpark of $30 million. This is an easier estimate to get to than the things that need to be redone over at the health center. Because these things, you can put your fingerprints on it and know what it is and get costs to it. There's a lot of big unknowns at the other building. So I'm gonna leave it open for questions at this point.
What time frame did you say to build, start to finish the whole thing?
I think each building was going to take 12 to 14 months to build. So it would be, but they're following, delivering one every 30 days or something like that. So figure, if I was to say a year and a half to build out,
Fine, right?
6 months to design.
about 18 months from start to finish, which is, that's a good pace.
Does that include the 6 months of the design concept or?
No, this is pure construction.
Okay.
start
So
to
it'd be
finish.
really a 2-year project then.
Yeah, because you will, there's a process of the design documents themselves. We already kind of know what the building is gonna be. I mean, we have to sit down, go through a group session or something like that to make sure that everybody's on the same page with everything. So there's a lot of what I call a schematic design or concept design thinking has to go into it. You've got the big concept. Now it's the details that need to be worked out. So there needs to be meetings on that. And then what we would do is part of our construction process is we'll do what we call a schematic design set. Okay, and then in that schematic design set, it will have enough information in those drawings for contractors or construction estimator to say it's in this window with a contingency of this. When we get the finished documentation, we're gonna take that contingency window and we're gonna make it this big, right? And we're gonna know what those costs are. So and again, it's a whole process. We're all gonna do the same figure. You start here and you come down to this point. And we're all about at our firm, we are what we call a developer's architect, because we keep the development and the money and the concept of where we need to be, that budget, that's our goal, is that budget.
Any other Supervisor Tomo?
Is this going to be, you said wood constructed out of wood?
Yes, sir. In frame.
Would these be, what I would call like a prefab where the walls could be constructed and brought in? Or does it have to be assembled and then just assembled opposed to being stick built?
There is two things. One's called modular construction, and it's done inside a building. Complete building is built and then brought to site. There's only a few companies that do that. They're very proprietary with their work and all kinds of stuff. But a lot of framing contractors will frame walls and put them and bring that. It's called panelization, basically. They'll come out with pre-built walls and then put them on site instead of doing site built stuff. It's still easier to just do it in the warehouse and then put it on a semi truck and bring stuff out. All the roof trusses are done the same way. They're all made in a factory and then brought out and then tilted up on, brought in and hoisted up on site. That's typically how framers are doing stuff. There's a lot of home builders are still doing site built framing, but major contractors are doing what's called panelization.
Is that what this would be proposed to be built in a factory to walls, like Wausau homes?
Yeah, that's a modular construction
Okay,
where they would build a whole building.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I'm talking about where the walls are built, brought out on site and then, put together. I've seen a lot of homes going up like that, just like the trusses, the
Yeah.
trusses are built in the factory.
Yeah. And so there's two things though. There's just to help you understand what a Wausau home is called a modular building. the electrical's already in the wall, everything is there, and then they hook it all up together. Panelization is they'll bring out all the walls. Okay, and then the sheathing goes on right away, everything is stabilized. Then electricians can come in and they'll drill the holes and then run their lines and all that kind of stuff. So that's what a modular is. It's all built and it all gets connected in the field. Whereas panelization is the walls are built and then brought out separately. And then everything, electrical and plumbing and everything else is just like built. The rest of the buildings are built.
Is there any way to speed up that timeline?
That is not my ability. It would be your construction company. If they got a way to do it, I mean, there's this estimate which you have and you can analyze it in more detail. But
Or even that first 6 months, because you pretty much have plans already.
that's a good question. Again, that's not for me to say, that's for our production crew to say yes to or no to. I don't know how much we could shave off the 6 months, to do it in 5. It's like there's no shortcuts, really. It's just,
Speed kills. every
yes,
time.
it causes mistakes,
Yeah. I figured.
so. And I only know that from experience.
Yeah.
It's just, I did have a project where we were about 80% through the construction documentation. And then the owner said, just send it in and get it approved, by the state. We'll go from there. Well, got approved and, we were able to get another 3 or 4 weeks on our documents, which maybe put us at 85%. And instead of waiting for their funding to come through, they said, let's get started. They were going to use their own money up front. And then because they had it flush with cash, so we got to move. And so we moved with 85% set of documents and tried to fill in the rest basically in the field while it's under construction. And the change orders up here because the contractor keeps saying, I don't have the documents are done. The documents are done. So rushing causes mistakes. It does.
Could actually delay it.
Well, that's the one thing you don't want. You do not want a whole lot of change.
Supervisor Busser.
So question for Matt, would this get that same 65 to 70% Medicaid reimbursement? Yeah, I know.
I think it'd be much higher.
Okay,
Again, we have to wait
yeah,
and know kind of numbers.
yeah,
And a year ago, we were in a better position with the state reimbursement because they were going to change the rate of new construction. They never did. So
Okay.
it just depends on people like Rick Gunderson, if he will help us push that.
I talked to him a little bit already.
Okay, so that's what becomes very critical.
so if they would push a change, it could go up then even more,
Yes,
okay?
yes.
Is there some risk potentially that it would go down? Like after we built this, that all of a sudden they would reduce that reimbursement?
You are never guaranteed. We're talking 20 to 30 years.
Yeah,
No,
so anything can happen,
anything
yeah,
could happen,
yeah,
up or down.
yeah.
Anyone else? Great presentation, though. Love the floor
Thank you.
plans.
Thank you.
Can we go back to the pros for the renovation? I have a couple to add. Which would also apply to this one.
Just a second here. Back together. Right. Couple more strengths for renovation.
Yeah.
Right. Come over
Just so they're documented. Okay, so we keep the morgue.
here. Well,
If we renovate over there, we keep the morgue.
okay.
Chapter 55s and chapter 51s.
What are the others?
That's all I can think of.
So Linda, what you're saying is that the new construction,
That would
Not
apply,
55?
that would apply, the chapter 55s and 51s, I believe, would apply on new construction too. The morgue only if we keep the old building. I think, right? They're not building in a morgue.
I think that'd be an added cost would be we'd have to have a morgue somewhere. So we
Somewhere.
might have to put it in the justice center, the sheriff's office area or somewhere else, you know.
So, and replacement strength. I believe he said that we would. Because we're licensed for 131 beds. But we would be reducing that number, and there's a tax on these beds. That we would, by going to a smaller facility, save. I think it was $182,750 a year, right? Talking about the tax on the beds, Matt. So if we go to a smaller facility, we would save, I think it was $182,750 a year. That we would not have to pay in tax on those excess beds.
That's correct.
So we should document that as a strength.
I think another strength would be that this would improve the quality of care that our residents would get.
Did you want to put the amount in? Because I think I have it right. I remember numbers generally.
it is right.
It is
I
right.
have
182,000. I just read it this afternoon.
80,
182,750. Yeah.
200 per bed. 2,200 per bed. 82,
Oh, is that what it is?
83 beds.
Okay.
I
We
think,
have a total of 80 beds, 48 skilled nursing, 32 with CPRN, so total of 80. But what's nice about this model is that anytime, depending on the demand, we can take a whole unit out of commission of skilled and into commission of CPRF or vice versa.
Yeah, so that's a strength. Right.
Our SNF.
I think another interesting one we need to know is ongoing maintenance. When you build something new, typically your ongoing maintenance cycles don't start for a period of time. Maybe it's 15 years, 20 years, 25 years before things start needing replacement.
And high efficiency mechanicals, so savings on, and better insulation, savings on energy. over the existing building.
Have any of these been designed with solar panels?
Not yet. But certainly. Today. I would say. Possibilities there.
Are they at the point where they pay for themselves or?
That's a good question because that's an analysis that needs to get done.
Okay,
That could be done. It'd be interesting to see that analysis. But it would be with whether the solar panel providers would be
Yeah.
Especially for Wisconsin.
plus,
yeah,
because I would like to see their analysis, because then I would have our engineers, review their data.
yeah,
And that stuff. And then it's all how you work with the electric utility. That's here out. And so there's that, whether they're going to buy anything, any excess. food
Yep.
and stuff like that. So there's a whole ethical
Yeah.
balance thing.
yeah.
So strength would be the higher Medicaid reimbursement.
Is that if Wisconsin changes its new construction,
Yeah,
where it's
it can.
dependent on that? Okay,
Potential.
I think even if they don't change it, there'd still be a good reimbursement, but it would get better if they change it.
And we're
Am
gonna
I-
work on that. That's on that's
Yeah.
my,
Am
my
I-
list of things to
yeah.
do.
Am I understanding that right, though? That it's gonna be a good reimbursement, but it could get better if we're able to push through this legislation?
I don't know. That's the thought at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should add good staff up there because with this, we'd be able to retain our existing staff.
And hopefully attract some.
Yeah,
Actually, the studies of that was mentioned that the original greenhouse policy. That part of that analysis was staff was changed. To the extremely high.
okay,
Because they wanted. to do
yeah,
their
Awesome.
Environment.
yeah. It's a much better work environment for them and a much better living environment for the residents.
Win-win.
Yeah,
there were some advantage to price, I think, wood studs versus steel studs. It's a wood frame.
Cost savings. I don't know about quality. Right?
Yeah. Times wood's easier to remodel with, if you have to tear walls down. And then the strength was the community interaction, gave the examples of parades and the fire trucks and the farmers market to
I
a
love that.
multi-generational community interaction.
now, I'm wondering how well that site would fit with that. For instance, there's a place, Regency. Am I remembering the name right? Regency Riverfront. That's built in with one of those new multi-units that's right on the riverfront, right north of 33. I might be getting the name wrong. But anyway, my point is a location like that might be much more conducive to community integration. Where we kind of pegged on that map for a location is kind of off on its own.
Yeah,
So
but if you set up an event there, people will come.
potentially, yeah,
The radiant heat in the roof of the patios, love that. How about some screened in porches? We have mosquitoes.
yeah,
But definitely quality of life there for the residents. I think, I don't know much about this stuff, but I think I like the idea of your mothership. Because even as far as maintenance, it would happen in that building, you know, for all of the things that go on there. I'm assuming laundry probably is over there too. But,
Could be done in the unit itself.
oh, okay, but either way, any, you know, maintenance and all of those activities being done over there is less disruption for the residents.
If, I mean, if you were offering laundry services, you know, in a commercial setting, yeah, that's possible over there. But within the unit itself, we still want our residential washer dryer, so we always hear the story that, you know, you're visiting mom's got something.
Don't get their own clothes back.
Yeah, well, it's that, but, you know, they got something like.
I've heard those, yeah.
The blanket on the chair, you found it like that.
Yeah.
You go and take it.
Right.
You know, that's part of your visiting
Yeah.
interaction.
There additional strengths?
The chapter 55, chapter 51 can be handled at that facility, right, Matt?
We don't deal with 51, only 55.
Okay.
And it could, yes,
Would a whole pod have to be skilled nursing or CBRF? Or could we actually have a situation where maybe we have 6 that are skilled nursing and 10 that are CBRF, and then maybe next month it's 8 and 8, or, you know, is it that flexible, or does it have to
No.
be pod by pod?
in with the current regulations, you can't do that,
Okay, so it's gotta be pod by pod.
yes.
So that's probably a weakness,
Limitation.
not as flexible. Flexible, but not totally flexible.
Additional strengths? I have a couple I'll throw out there. see
Yeah,
if you
go ahead.
agree. If you don't agree, that's fine too. I put park like setting. Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, landscape trees.
So
Yeah.
landscaping. Kind of ties in with the quality of care, but the whole non-institutional feel.
yep,
Seemed
yeah.
That was a big plus for Cedar, wasn't it?
I
Yeah,
think.
I think, yeah,
almost
yeah.
like
For Cedar communities, yeah.
The other one I wrote down was everything would be up to code.
We'd start out at code, yeah.
Yeah.
Now codes change over time, so 10 years from now, you know, but
And considering what's happened the last couple of years, up to date air exchange.
yeah,
Up to current. But the future code. right?
yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Sounds like we're ready for.
I have one more.
Oh, is that-
One more to add to that. Helps us meet our ethical obligation to with the citizens in Washington County.
Or moral. Right? Moral
Moral,
obligation.
okay, moral.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, moral is the term that the citizen advisory committee. can
Okay.
use as well. All right, limitations of replacement.
so, what did you say, weaknesses,
And limitations.
limitations?
Right off,
We
yeah,
have to get a loan.
right,
Borrow
Right on.
money.
Yeah, the cost, yeah.
right. Right, right off
That
the,
one down to-
so right off the bat, the length of time for it to take place to replace. A good 2 years, it looks like. And that's, I'm assuming if there aren't any supply chain issues or, because that is one of the limitations that supply chain issues still exist somewhat. But it was 6 months for the consultation and the concept, and then another 18 months or so to build.
I recall there being a question about the boilers and how much life they had in them. Do we know that the boilers in the current facility would make it 2 years while we're building this new one?
I would say yes.
Well, yeah, they've lasted this long, they're gonna last, but they may need maintenance at some point, something might need parts replaced. So that's your ongoing issue right now, is
Yeah.
keeping things going. Mechanical.
Yeah.
So that would be a weakness to this, is we have ongoing maintenance in the current facility.
While we're building this, yep. Did this estimate include costs for tearing down the old building after the new ones are built?
Doesn't have it labeled out.
No, I don't think we've seen
Itemized.
an estimate on that. But that would be a cost and a number of our scenarios. I
Yeah,
mean, all
yeah.
except one.
yeah, but we need to kind of factor it in
But,
here, yeah.
Yeah, right.
What were we thinking, $1 million to tear down? or-
We're gonna cover that next meeting.
Okay,
All right. Awesome.
yeah,
So we can add it at that time.
yeah,
Any other?
Just to
Weakness?
build out on the cost a little bit more, so there would also be a cost as a limitation in the replacement. Because we don't know how we would be funding it. When we have discussions with the board, we already have the 3.5 million. Is that a bond? It's before my time, so is that in the form of
Yes.
a bond?
It is a bond.
So I'm assuming we'd maybe do the same thing with this dollar amount, a bond, or would we increase the tax levy to help with some of it? How much? And with the bond rates, interest rates have gone up is the limitation.
Right,
yeah.
In both cases,
but they should be more available to build, because building should slow down with interest rates up. Pros
Yeah.
and cons.
Would that be another cost too, that we'd have to pay off the existing bond?
Yes,
Yeah.
you definitely, and that's
Okay.
gonna be all addressed at a later meeting
Well, but that applies to this,
for all of them.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to factor that.
because
in
it
here as well.
affects the bottom line of our
Yeah.
estimates, right? Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I like this idea, but I think this has the same political risk. When you look at the costs. Can we get enough board support?
Across the county.
Yeah, across the county for a facility that still predominantly competes in the West Bend market and serves the West Bend.
I have another strength for this one. And you're
Stop
ready.
going out of order.
Sorry, I can't.
I
help
know,
it.
I know, you're
I
thinking
think
of
out
it.
Out of
Yeah,
order.
yeah, no, it's cool.
I have
I'm
a
just
chaotic
just
mind.
picking on
What
ya.
can I say?
Okay, so we're back to another strength.
Another strength, opportunity, value of the land that would then be vacant. To either be sold or reused or whatever, but that's why I call it opportunity value. Because we don't know what we would do with it.
Real estate value, yeah.
And then highway 203 as well.
Yeah.
Any other limitations?
When can I move in? Just
Yeah, that'll hold.
not that old yet.
Uh-huh.
Sure looks like a nice place though,
So you're thinking about the future, huh?
right?
All right. I don't think I can get list in here or first two outs.
Yes, I think that's gonna be very helpful for us as we go through this. Okay, so anyone else have anything else? We need to set a meeting date for the next meeting. Matt, do you have anything else?
No, there, you know, the financial of the replacement. We'll have someone come in and talk to you about that. Remember, chances are they'll look at the 30 to 33 million and they'll come up with a proposal that the county would kick in 8, 10, 15 million, remember, and then you bond for the rest. So there are additional expenses that will be part of this whole thing. Keep that in mind. And secondly, I'd like to see what we're going to cover. You and I, generally, your committee recommends areas, and for sure, we'd like to cover demolition of the building next time. And there'll be other points that we should look at, and then we should set the date.
Okay,
Because if I have to bring speakers in, I need to have some flexibility.
okay. That sounds good. Does anyone else have anything else? No? Meeting's adjourned.
All right.